Today we ask if 36mm is still an acceptable size for a men's watch, and check out the Tudor Black Bay 36 as our reference. Now, I'm no stranger to a 36mm watch, having worn a Seamaster 120 for almost 20 years. But my tastes have moved on, and so has that watch. So how does it feel to strap a 36mm watch back on the wrist? Let's find out. I'm Andy, and welcome to the English Watch. Don't forget to check me out on Instagram, and if you like this content, I'd really appreciate a thumbs up. And while you're at it, why not subscribe? I don't upload very often, so these episodes will be a nice way to break up all the other great watch content you're consuming. Now, I try to respond to all the comments left at the end, so please get stuck in and let's have a debate about size. As I mentioned, I'm no stranger to a 36mm watch. My trusty Seamaster 120 took me on a nearly 20-year journey through a changing career, a big house move or three, the birth of my sons, and numerous family special occasions. This watch covered them all. A keeper, you may say. But then, bam! Along came a Planet Ocean, a whopping 43.5mm, making the old timer look a little, well, old-fashioned and a bit small. And try as I might, I just couldn't get back to wearing a 36mm 120. It was like a fuse had blown in my brain. But there was also a style and taste aspect to this choice. It wasn't just the size. Looking at my watch journey, you'll see the big jump from the 36mm Seamaster 120 to the 43.5mm Planet Ocean. But then we take a gradual slide back down with the Speedmaster at 42mm, the Tudor GMT at 41mm, and finally the Submariner at 40mm. Now, the way a watch feels and looks on the wrist is only partially a function of its absolute diameter across the case. Other factors like weight, lug to lug and thickness all have a degree of influence. So I have a variety of sizes and enjoy them all, as each one has its own style or design aspect that appeals to me. Now, watch sizes have crept up over the last couple of decades, and still sports watches are now what everyone wants. Not dainty dress watches or sports watches trying to look like dress watches. We want to wear our watches out on display, not tuck them under a sleeve. And that goes for the ladies too, who also like to rock a sports watch, and why shouldn't they? So how did this blue dial Tudor Black Bay 36 come into my possession? Well, I bought it for my wife. It's her watch, it's not mine. She wanted a bigger watch, not too big, so a sporty 36mm fitted the bill. And in this case, the lure of Lady Gaga was just enough to sway her away from an equivalent Oyster Perpetual at twice the price. The Black Bay 36 was originally launched back in 2017 with a black dial in 36 and 41mm sizes. References back to the classic Rolex Explorer 14270 are still made, and at the price point Tudor offers, it's hard to deny it as a great affordable homage. But as we've seen recently with the Black Bay 58, Tudor like to offer more variety, so in 2008 the blue dial was launched, alongside a smaller 32mm case size. Out of the three sizes, the 36mm is the sweet spot with the most pleasing dial layout. I feel that the 41mm version is a little too large and the dial too big for the small indices. The new 41mm Oyster Perpetual manages this much better. And it's one of my criticisms of the Tudor GMT, where the indices could have been a bit larger like they are on the regular Black Bay. So why not check out my full review and unboxing of the GMT. The 32mm is a nice addition, but this one is definitely for the ladies. What is cool though is Tudor have kept the design consistent rather than making the smaller models dressier, as Omega have done with the Aquaterra. Similar in concept to the smaller Oyster Perpetuals, but on this occasion Rolex have definitely taken the high ground with their dial colours. Now, a full rundown of the 2020 Oyster Perpetuals, that's worth a look. The dial layout has the typical Tudor snowflake hands, elongated triangle at 12 o'clock, and mix of round and stick markers are, to my eye, perfectly balanced, and follow the Black Bay lineage, as does the odd crown extension tube, and this doesn't bother me too much and makes the Tudor Rose sign crown easier to grab and unscrew. All are available with steel bracelets, a choice of leather straps and Tudor's fabric strap. Size-wise, the 36mm is obviously 36mm across the case, a compact 44mm lug to lug and 10.5mm thick. Annoyingly, the lug width is 19mm, making sourcing aftermarket straps a real pain. but the bracelet does taper down nicely to 16mm. There's no fake rivets on the links as with the 58. This is after all a dressier model, but it does retain the Tudor shield shaped clasp, complete with safety latch and ceramic balls, giving it a nice snappy feel. Measuring across the dial, this one shares the same 30mm as the Rolex Submariner, with only the absence of a dive bezel making the difference, pushing the case size a little wider. Now this is quite an understated dial, with very few lines of text and no reference to the 150 meters of water resistance. It has a dark blue lacquer that gives it a very regal and understated look, and this is where the value is to be found on this watch. We have rhodium plated hands and indices, and deep filled with super luminova, not Rolex's blue chromalite. Tudor's still glow green. The Tudor shield and logo are printed in silver along with the outboard minute track, blending in beautifully with the indices and hands. The smiley self-winding text is an indication that this one still uses an ETA movement, like the Tudors of old, and not an in-house movement like its straight writing kin. And despite Tudor referring to this caliber as T600, it is in fact an ETA 2824. Now Tudor are pretty cagey about the absolute source of their movements, where calibers starting with a T, like this one, are externally sourced, and MT designating in-house or externally sourced and modified in-house. Where the in-house movements come into their own is with longer power reserves, anti-magnetism and longer service intervals. So summing up, is 36mm too small? Well, only in that 45mm plus is too big for me. And ultimately, as human beings, we're all different shapes and sizes. We all have different tastes and dress up and dress down according to our style. What we have here is a crossover size, where some men with smaller wrists can still rock a 36mm, no problem, and balk at the thought of anything bigger than 40mm. However, manufacturers are moving to 40mm plus as the norm for men's watches. Some would say the classic sweet spot is around 39mm for a polished bezel watch like this. Think Patek Philippe Calatrava or the previous generation Oyster Perpetual. At the end of the day, only you know. So don't let me or anyone else tell you what you should or shouldn't wear. Now I've enjoyed wearing this watch for a few days. It's legible, it's interesting to look at, and it disappears on the wrist. And price aside, and this is an affordable watch at around £2,000 and from a top brand like Tudor. But there are alternatives, cheaper, better alternatives for what is essentially a field watch, a three-hander with no date. Look to Zinn, Oris and Hamilton for example, all with very similar ETA movements. So can you wear a 36mm watch? Hell yeah, go try one on, see how it would fit into your collection. Don't forget to subscribe if you like this content, and please check out my Instagram at The English Watch. I'm Andy, this has been The English Watch, take care and I'll see you soon. Bye for now.